Pete Calandra here. Today's video is the second installment of a weekly blog that I'll be keeping over the summer here, where I'll be documenting the creative process for my current film project. This film is a documentary of a fairly well-known athlete that's going to be shown on ESPN next winter. It's basically their biography. And as such, it's a work in progress. I can't really show any of the video and I can't really play any of the dialogue. But I can give a description of what's going on in very general terms, which will get my point across in terms of how the music fits in and the kinds of choices that I'll be making. Now, this is just a down and dirty quick video. It's unscripted, so if my voiceover is a little hesitant, I hope you'll forgive me with that. So let's talk about some of the first things that I did. Before I started writing this, after completing the first cue, I made a couple of PDFs, very rough notation here, so that I have a general. Let me make this bigger so it takes up more of the screen. Here, where I'm basically took a rough notation of the opening. I didn't put any key signatures in. This is just for me so that I can have access to these themes whenever I need to. And that comes in handy as I'm going forward. Now, I did this in Pro Tools and I quickly shot it over to Sibelius, and that's where I got the cool jazz font here. So that's the first thing I did after finishing with the opening. And then I got into composing. So let me play the piece, and on the flip side of that, I'll come back and talk you through it. All right, let me get the webcam back on. Here we go. Great. So this cue, I brought the template in from the first cue, and I imported that session data here, and then just to briefly go over it, I'm using a lot of product from Spitfire Audio, Orchestral Tools, Spectrasonics, and on this cue I actually played a Korg Wave Drum Global, and I'll show you those tracks in a second. Now, I got notes from one of the directors, one of the producers. There's two people that are putting this film together. So again, as is typical, I marked up my timeline here with just some quick descriptions of what's going on, and that gives me the structure of this piece and how I'm going to write it. You can see here that I've got some time signatures, some tempo changes, and that all works really well. All right, so at the beginning they wanted something really soft and peaceful. So let me open up these tracks a little bit so we can see things a little better. And I've got a sound here from Omnisphere that I worked on a little bit. It's a preset that I've changed the filter settings. Called Distant Memories. Yeah, I brought the cutoff down. I changed the envelope. And let's take a listen to that. All right, so it's a very short little bit and a couple of key things. They definitely want voices in this piece, and so I've got two sources for voices that I'm using as of right now, and that may change as I go through the piece. I'm using something, oh yes, this is from, what's the name of that company? Vocalese Heaviosity, that's it. And this has a bunch of vocal phrases, and I had to tune them, get them in the right key, and they really add a lot of life and humanity. And I've got that going through the Pro R reverb from Fab Filter, and it's got some internal delay. You could hear that the echo is coming in first on the left speaker and then on the right speaker if you're listening to headphones. And that's really ethereal, and it goes on. And then that's also joined with a little figure here on the una corda. And I've got that, as I did in the opening, going through the same chain, the Pro R1, the wet reverb by New Neighbor, and the adaptive verb. So after that, they wanted something playful, right? So I went back to that little upright bass here, which is from LA Scoring Strings. I may change that. I like it for now, but I haven't printed anything to audio yet because this has to go through a lot of approvals at some point, and then I'll print things to audio and mix them properly. But right now I'm leaving everything as MIDI. And so I've got that bass line with these drums. This is the bottom drums from the Hans Zimmer percussion library. And I like that little rough there right before the downbeat. It adds a lot of, like a little march kind of a feel to it. And then the foot on the hi-hat on the offbeats. Again, there's a two-measure phrase, and then I'm layering something on in the next two measures to create a change or variation. And this is typical of my orchestrational style. And then on this postmodern drum kit from Easy Drummer, I have it going through Sound Toys Echo Boy Jr., I believe, with a Vincent Echo Rec kind of a program that's timed to this. Right? It does a really cool panning thing where the first delay is to the left I mean to the right. The second delay is to the left, and then the delays are sort of panned in the center after that, which is really cool, I think. Because I'm only hitting it on the downbeat. So that does a few things. That gives me an additional rhythm, and it also gives me some soundstage panning interest, and that's really nice. All right, so we'll listen to this and move forward. And then we've got a little melody that's going to be coming in shortly. And these are the Eric Whitacre Spitfire voices. Boo, boo, boo. Just a little playful melody, right? It's almost goofy. And then right there, it just so happened I picked out the right tempo. There is a 4-beat montage with a bunch of still photos, all one after the other on eighth notes. And I've got my Spitfire strings here, the aperture strings, and I'm just doing a little ascending figure. Let's see, aperture, spiccato. Right, and I like that because it's not too big. And that leads me into the first rhythmic part. Comes back and it's reorchestrated a little bit. I've got this really cool wood kalimba here, which is in omnisphere. And what I've done with this is got a huge, as most omnisphere stuff does, it's so full that it can dominate a track. So I've added a high pass filter here to take off some of the low end. So here's the sound. Right, you can hear the thump when it's bypassed. All right, so and then to the drum groove here, I've added a wave drum that I'm playing. It's like a little pandero kind of a drum, which is kind of cool. Little pandero, which is a small drum, hand drum, and then that layers nicely with the bonham and the hi-hat. Right, I'm not playing a crazy rhythm on that, the wave drum. It's simple. It layers in, though, and fits in with the parts on the other drum. So let's continue forward with this. And this time I'm layering the voices with a bassoon. So again, just a variation. And I believe there might be, is there a cello there? Yes, there's a solo cello as well. And then now, right, so I do a change there. I add the ensemble strings here. Add some pizzicatos. Oh, there's some pizzicato strings in this section too, which I forgot about. So let's listen to those. They're aperture, so I can, very small, only sounds like a couple of players. And that works really nicely with the wood kalimba. So you see how those different sections, they fit in like a glove. And it's part of my orchestrational concept that every section should sound good when it's played by itself. Sections should sound good when they're played together. So you really have to check all these things as you're writing to make sure that everything fits in. And that's one way you do it, by soloing instruments out. Okay, so now I've got this area here where I've sort of, let me play it. Right, right? So I'm getting ready to go to another section. There's more dialogue going on, and that's another big concept when you're doing documentaries is there's constant talking. So your music has to fit in with the dialogue. It really needs to make sense, and it really needs to leave space for people to be speaking and be heard. Otherwise, they'll turn your music down so low you can't hear it. So that's something to think about when you're scoring a documentary. And I've just sort of got this circular figure here in the pizzicato strings. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And then that I have the spiccato strings. And so the two of those together. And that leads us into the next bit. Just starting a little build up here. We want a groove. And let's listen to this. So we've got this loop. Shakers. And the bottom drums are still playing. Kick drum there with some fills. Right? And on top of that, another pattern in the wave drum. So you add all that together. Oh, excuse me. You know, it's a nice groove. It's moving along, but it's not too over the top. Oh, and then I have this hauschka. Right, so that's a muted piano string. Just adding some low end in there really nicely. And then I've got a bunch of paddy stuff going up here. The voices come in next. And then I have some low string pads with the Neo Strings by Spitfire pulses here. Very low and long. And it's fading in and out because I've done a lot of work with expression and mod. Gives me a nice low end there. And another character comes in here, and I start to change the key, and I change the texture here. It gets bigger, a little bigger. Right, the bottom drums. And then I do this little fill here, leave a space because there is a dialogue that goes on in this particular spot that the note I got was have an accent when the person on screen says these particular words. Well, I prefer to have those words in the open, so I did a little accent before that, left a few beats of space, and if we zoom in here, we see that it ended on B4, and I left an extra eighth note right here before the next bit comes in. And then I've got the industrial hit that I created in the hallway of my old apartment that I reversed to give me a nice swoop. Going through lots of reverb. Change. And when the music, what I wanted here was that there was an event about to happen, and it's the moments before the event, and they're showing all the athletes getting ready for the event, and you just want light tension, because people are a little bit nervous, they're anxious, or they're just getting in their minds, they're getting prepared for the competition. So I bring in the harmonics from the first cue here. They came in a little earlier here, but they're doing the kind of edge delay, edge from U2. And then when we get towards the end of this, right in this area here, I change the rhythm a little bit because we're getting right to the beginning of this event, and I wanted to just leave a little bit of space with no rhythm, and then when the event started, the next bit would come in. Boom. And then in this area here, I didn't want to leave it completely blank, so I brought in this distant memory sound. It's a different chord here. It's beautiful. And then this last bit is a reprise of the end of the first cue, which I like because I played it all in. I didn't copy and pasted it. I used the notation, and I played some of the things very similarly, but I altered the music a little bit so it's not an exact repeat, but it's enough of a repeat that you'll start to recognize it as I bring this theme in. And I'll be varying this theme as I go forward into the film. I'll be making it more gritty and a little bit more edgy as the plot develops, the story develops. And here I bring in the flute and the oboe to double the string, just to add a little variation. Those are the orchestral tools winds. And I've got a marimba here as an alternative to the to that wood kalimba. So you sort of have And then right here, I kept the groove going, and this is after the event, and the person is being interviewed on television, and they're showing that, and it's victorious, and I wanted it to be something that was uplifting and positive and victorious almost, but not over the top. And this is a big thing about scoring films, is to know the proportion of the emotion you're trying to achieve and to be able to execute that musically. So I've just got that pedal point going in the strings with these they're actually dyads above it. Do, dee, do, do. And then we're going to a button at the end, and I've got those really nice aperture pizzicatos. I'm really enjoying the aperture strings. I wish that Spitfire would make them available to everybody. And then just one thing about these pizzicato strings here, right, that I hope that people will take to heart is that, notice, they're rolled. And then the last one is struck. And I kind of like that approach. Okay, I'm going to play this out from the beginning to the end. But before I do, a couple of other thoughts. I had some problems this week with Pro Tools. It kept on crashing on me, and it took forever for things to load. And I realized that one of my effects chains was a little corrupt, so I had to redo that. And it took me several hours one day, and it got me out of the mood to write. So as you're going along this journey, things are going to happen where you're going to have to figure out technical issues and how to solve them. And I just did Google searches, and I went through all the different answers I found until I found the right solution. And what I instituted, since I do want to have that complex effects chain with echo and reverb and a gatekeeper, which is a gated sequence plugin, I deactivate all my plugins before I close the session down, and then I activate them afterwards, and that seems to work really well, and actually it makes the session boot up much quicker doing it that way. So that's done on Pro Tools by holding down Control, Option, and Command, and clicking on all the different inserts to close down the plugins in those inserts. So yeah, that was some stuff to do. And I'm going to play this out from the end. Let me just get set here. But before I do, if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. Please give a thumbs up. Please leave any comments, questions that you've got below. Ring the bell. Do all the stuff. I appreciate anybody watching these videos, and I'm trying to build an audience here, and any help is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Let me play this one out. Get rid of the webcam. Turn down the Yeti.